Hello, welcome to another video on our channel. Here we translate testimonies from people who have had near-death experiences and other spiritual experiences. Today, let's learn the story of Callista Morgan. She says she survived a heart attack, had an encounter with beings of light, and had visions about August 25th. If you are not yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe now. Leave a comment with your name and city. Let's now hear Callista's testimony. My name is Callista Morgan, and I have a story to tell that has completely changed the way I see life and the world around me. I'm 35 years old. I'm a nurse, or at least I was until recently. If you saw me now, you would probably think I was much older. The last few years have been a roller coaster of emotions and experiences that have left their mark not only on my soul, but also on my body. Sitting here, as I tell my story, I still wonder how I got to this point. Not long ago, I had a life that many would consider enviable. She was a respected nurse, with a promising career ahead of her. I had a beautiful house, a loving family, and 2 wonderful children who were the light in my eyes. But life has a peculiar way of surprising us, doesn't it? Today, as I eagerly await August 25th, a date that I believe is of great importance not only for me, but for all of humanity, I reflect on the journey that brought me here. It is a story of loss, pain, and despair, but also of rebirth, hope, and a deep understanding of the interconnectedness of all things. I become more and more certain of their veracity. This is the story of how I lost everything: my job, my home, my dignity, and almost my own life, only to discover that, in fact, I never lost anything that really mattered. It is the story of how I was taken to a realm beyond ordinary human understanding, where the boundaries between life and death, past and future, self and universe dissolve. I share this not to convince anyone, but in the hope that my experience can offer comfort, hope, and perhaps even a glimpse of the greater truth that surrounds us all. As we approach what I believe is a crucial turning point for humanity, I feel it is more important than ever to share this message of unity and unconditional love. So, if you are willing, I invite you to embark on this journey with me, a journey that took me from the depths of despair to the heights of cosmic understanding, and back to life with renewed purpose. This is the story of my death and my rebirth, of my fall and my rise, of my loss and my encounter with something much greater than I could ever have imagined. It all started so subtly that I barely noticed it at first. It was as if an imperceptible fog was slowly settling over my life, obscuring the clarity and joy I once knew. The first signs came in the form of persistent tiredness, frequent headaches, and a general feeling of malaise that I couldn't explain. At first, I attributed these symptoms to work stress. After all, being a nurse has never been easy, and I have always prided myself on giving my best to my patients. But as the months went by, my body seemed to be betraying me more and more. I began having alarming heart palpitations, episodes of anxiety that left me paralyzed, and periods of depression so deep I could barely get out of bed. The diagnoses began to pile up like a pile of unpaid bills: heart problems, chronic anxiety, severe depression. Each visit to the doctor seemed to bring a new grim revelation about the state of my health. It was as if my body was waging war on itself, and I was a helpless spectator. The impact on my professional life was devastating. I started making mistakes at work, mistakes that, fortunately, were caught before they could cause real harm to patients. But the trust my colleagues had in me began to erode. I could see it in their eyes: the worry, the doubt, and eventually, the pity. My supervisor, a woman I had always admired for her compassion and professionalism, called me in for a difficult conversation. With tears in her eyes, she told me I needed to take an extended medical leave. "Callista," she said, "you need to take care of yourself before you can take care of others." Those words, although spoken gently, were like a punch in the gut. My work had always been my anchor, my way of contributing to the world. Without him, I felt adrift, without purpose. At home, things were no better. My husband, initially supportive, began to show signs of frustration with my worsening condition. Our children, still too young to fully understand what was happening, could feel the tension in the air. The fights became more frequent, the silence between us heavier. It was during this period that I began to question everything I believed in. What kind of nurse was I if I couldn't even take care of my own health? What kind of mother was I if I could barely be there for my children? The self-confidence I had built up over the years began to crumble like a sandcastle hit by waves. Little by little, piece by piece, the life I had so carefully built began to fall apart. And I, who had always been the caretaker, the strong one, the rock for others, found myself sinking into an abyss of hopelessness from which I could see no way out. There are times in life when we think we have reached rock bottom, only to discover that there is still more to fall to. For me, this moment came on a seemingly ordinary day, but it would become the turning point of my entire existence. That morning, I woke up in the backseat of my car, my aching body protesting yet another uncomfortable night's sleep. Beside me, my youngest son, Oliver, was still sleeping peacefully, oblivious to the gravity of our situation. I looked at him, his angelic face framed by his tousled hair, and I felt a mixture of overwhelming love and crushing guilt. How did we get to this point? The question echoed in my mind as I prepared for another day of fighting. I had lost my home months ago, unable to keep up the payments with the loss of my job. My husband and my oldest daughter had gone to live with relatives in another state, but I refused to give up my independence, my dignity. What a bitter irony, clinging to my dignity while living in a car with my son. That day, I had an appointment with my cardiologist, Dr. Evelyn Harrington. I already knew what she would say, that my heart was getting worse, that I needed to avoid stress, as if that were possible in my situation, that my life was at risk. But what else could I do? Abandon Oliver? Give up completely? Arriving at the office, I left Oliver in the waiting room with some toys and went in for the appointment. Dr. Harrington, with her usual expression of professional concern, reviewed my scans. His words were serious, but I barely heard them. It was as if there was a barrier between us, and his voice reached me muffled, distant. "Callista," she said finally, her voice cutting through the fog in my mind. "Do you understand the gravity of your situation? Without drastic changes, you may not have much time." I nodded mechanically, promised that I would do everything possible to improve my situation, and left the office feeling even heavier than when I entered. That's when I saw something that made my heart literally stop for a moment. In the waiting room, next to Oliver, were a police officer and a woman I recognized as being from the Department of Social Services. Their compassionate yet determined looks told me everything I needed to know before they even opened their mouths. "Ms. Morgan," the social worker began, her voice soft but firm, "due to your current living conditions and poor health, we have been forced to make a difficult decision. For Oliver's well-being, he will be temporarily placed in the care of the state." The world around me seemed to slow down and then stop completely. I saw, as if I were outside my own body, Oliver being gently taken away by the social worker. I saw her eyes wide with confusion, her little hand reaching toward me, her lips forming the word, "Mommy." And then, as if the entire weight of the universe had suddenly fallen on my shoulders, I collapsed. My knees gave way and I fell to the cold hospital floor. The pain in my chest was unbearable, not just physical, but an emotional agony that seemed to tear at my very soul. As I lay there, unable to move, unable to breathe, unable to think, I felt something shift. It was as if my consciousness was being pulled away from my body. The last thing I heard before I was engulfed in darkness was Dr. Harrington's distant voice, screaming for help. At that moment, at the bottom of the deepest pit I have ever known, my journey beyond life was about to begin. What happened next is something I've tried to explain countless times since, but words always seem inadequate to capture the true essence of the experience. However, I will do my best to share with you what I experienced in those moments that seemed eternal and instantaneous at the same time. At first, everything was darkness. Not the ordinary darkness we experience when we close our eyes or enter a room without light, but an absolute, oppressive darkness that seemed to have a weight and substance of its own. It was as if I were falling into a bottomless abyss, but at the same time, floating in an infinite void. In this state, all of my senses seemed to have been amplified and, at the same time, completely altered. I wasn't seeing with my eyes, hearing with my ears, or feeling with my physical body. It was a completely new and difficult to describe form of perception. In the midst of this overwhelming darkness, I heard a voice. It wasn't a voice in the conventional sense. It was more like a thought that wasn't my own, a presence that communicated directly with the essence of my being. The message was simple but profound. Stop resisting. At that moment, I realized I had been struggling, fighting against the darkness, against the feeling of falling, against the experience itself. And then, with a sigh that seemed to come from the soul itself, I surrendered. It was as if a veil had been lifted. The darkness began to dissipate, not disappearing completely, but transforming. Now, I found myself floating in a vast ocean of light. It was a light I had never seen before, an indescribable mixture of deep blue and cosmic black. Imagine being in the middle of the universe, surrounded by stars, galaxies, and nebulae, but at the same time, feeling completely at home. It was as if every atom of my being was in perfect harmony with everything around me. There was no longer any separation between me and the rest of the cosmos. We were one. In this state of cosmic union, I began to perceive truths that seemed to have always been there, just waiting to be recognized. I understood that time, as we know it, is an illusion. Past, present, and future existed simultaneously on this plane. I saw my life, not just the moments I had already lived, but also those yet to come, as an intricate tapestry, each strand connected to countless others, forming a pattern of indescribable beauty. The feeling of peace and love that surrounded me is something that I carry with me to this day, a treasure that sustains me in the most difficult moments. It was an unconditional, universal love that made no distinctions or judgments. I felt completely accepted, understood and loved exactly as I was, with all my flaws and imperfections. As I floated in this cosmic ocean of light and consciousness, I felt as if I was being guided to a deeper understanding. The revelations began to flow, not as received information, but as truths I had always known but had somehow forgotten. Suddenly I saw a date before me, August 25th. This vision was accompanied by a series of images and sensations that unfolded like an accelerated film. I saw events happening all over the world, natural disasters of terrifying proportions, social crises that shook established power structures, but also moments of human unity and solidarity that brought tears to my eyes. I understood, with a clarity I had never experienced before, that this date would mark a turning point for humanity. It would not be the end, as some might fear, but a collective awakening, a moment when we would be forced to confront our choices as a species and as individuals. I saw that my role in this great unfolding of events was not insignificant, as I had come to believe in my darkest moments. On the contrary, each life, including mine, was a vital piece in the great cosmic puzzle. My journey, with all its pains and challenges, was not a punishment or a series of random misfortunes, but part of a greater plan, an expression of divine will manifesting itself through my human experience. I understood that each of us contributes to the growth and evolution of universal consciousness. Our struggles, our joys, sends ripples through the fabric of reality, affecting everything and everyone. I understood that love is not just a feeling, but the very force that holds the universe together. In this state of expanded understanding, I received insights into the nature of reality that challenged everything I thought I knew. I saw that the physical world we inhabit is just a thin layer of a much vaster and more complex reality. Our physical bodies are temporary vehicles for our eternal souls, and death as we know it is simply a transition, a change of state. I was introduced to concepts of dimensions beyond the three we experience on the physical plane. I have seen how these higher dimensions interpenetrate and influence our world, yet we are often unaware of their presence. One of the most profound revelations was about the nature of time. I saw that the past, present, and future exist simultaneously, and that what we perceive as the linear flow of time is actually an illusion created by our limited minds. This realization brought with it an incredible sense of freedom, the realization that we are not prisoners of our past, nor victims of a predetermined future. As I absorbed these cosmic truths, I felt a shift in my perspective on my own life. The problems that had seemed so overwhelming and insurmountable moments before now seemed small in the grand scheme of things. Not that they had lost their importance. On the contrary, each challenge took on new meaning as part of my journey of spiritual growth and evolution. I understood that I had been given a second chance, not just to live, but to live with renewed purpose and a deeper understanding of my true nature and place in the universe. I felt an immense responsibility, but also a sense of peace and acceptance. I knew that no matter what the future held, I would never be truly alone or lost again. The revelations continued to flow, each one more profound and transformative than the last. I was being prepared, instructed, for what was to come, and although part of me wanted to remain in this state of cosmic understanding and union forever, I knew that my journey on Earth was not yet over. There was work to be done, a mission to accomplish. And so, with a mix of reluctance and renewed determination, I prepared to return. The first sensation was pain, a sharp, pulsing pain in my chest that reminded me immediately of the fragility of my diseased heart. Then came awareness of the sounds around me, the rhythmic beeping of machines, muffled voices, the distinctive noise of a busy hospital. I opened my eyes slowly, blinking against the fluorescent light that seemed too blinding after the softness of the cosmic light I had experienced. Little by little, the shapes around me began to become clear. I was in an intensive care unit, surrounded by medical equipment and busy nurses. Dr. Harrington stood beside me, her eyes wide with surprise and relief. "Welcome back, Callista," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "You gave us quite a scare." I tried to speak, but my throat was dry and my voice wouldn't come out. A nurse kindly offered me some ice cubes to suck on, which brought momentary relief. When I finally managed to get some words out, the first thing I said was, "How long?" "You've been unconscious for 3 days," Dr. Harrington replied. "Your heart stopped for almost 5 minutes. Frankly, it's a miracle you're here with no apparent brain damage." 5 minutes. It was difficult to believe that this entire experience, which seemed to have lasted an eternity, had occurred in just 5 minutes of our earthly time. But, of course, I now knew that time as we know it is just an illusion. Over the next few days, as I recovered in the hospital, I began to notice subtle but profound changes in my perception of the world around me. It was as if my senses had been expanded, tuned to capture aspects of reality that had previously gone unnoticed. I could see energy around people, colorful auras that changed according to their emotional and physical states. The hospital walls, which had previously seemed solid and opaque, now had an almost translucent quality, as if I could see through them if I concentrated hard enough. But the most noticeable change was in my own energy. Despite my body's physical weakness, I felt more alive than ever. It was as if every cell of my being was vibrating at a higher frequency, more aligned with the universal energy I had experienced during my journey. As my physical strength returned, so did my determination to share what I had learned. I knew I had been sent back for a purpose, and I was eager to begin fulfilling that mission. However, I quickly discovered that communicating my experience would not be easy. Words seemed inadequate to describe what I had experienced. How can we explain colors that do not exist in our visual spectrum? How can we describe sensations for which we have no references in our earthly experience? Furthermore, not everyone was ready or willing to listen. Some looked at me with skepticism, others with concern, as if they feared I had lost my mind. Even those closest to me seemed to have difficulty understanding the depth of the transformation I had undergone, but I couldn't be dissuaded. The urgency of the message I had to share, about the interconnectedness of all things, about love as the fundamental force of the universe, about the imminent awakening that awaited us, was greater than any fear of being misinterpreted or rejected. As I prepared to leave the hospital and face the world again, I knew my life would never be the same. The path ahead of me wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long time, I felt truly alive, full of purpose and hope. And so, with a heart full of universal love and a mind expanded by cosmic knowledge, I took my first steps towards a new life, a life dedicated to sharing the light I had found in the depths of darkness. Leaving the hospital was like being born again, but this time with an expanded consciousness and a clear mission. The world around me felt both familiar and completely new. Every color was more vibrant, every sound richer, every interaction more meaningful. It was like I was seeing everything through a new pair of eyes. It was a place where I could begin to rebuild my life and work toward regaining custody of Oliver. In the first few days after my discharge, I was flooded with a series of intense emotions. There was a deep joy in being alive, an overwhelming gratitude for the gift of a second chance. But there was also an acute sadness about parting with Oliver and a palpable anxiety about the uncertain future that awaited us. However, the inner peace I had brought with me from my near-death experience remained a stable anchor amid the emotional storm. I knew that no matter what happened, I would never be truly alone or lost again. One of the first things I noticed was how my perception of other people had changed. Where before I saw strangers, I now saw kindred souls at different stages of their spiritual journey. The empathy I had always had as a nurse was now magnified to an almost supernatural level. I could feel the pain, joy, fears, and hopes of those around me as if they were my own feelings. This new sensitivity brought unexpected challenges. Walking in public places was sometimes overwhelming. With all the emotions and energies colliding around me, I had to learn to create energetic barriers, to center myself and protect myself without losing connection with others. My physical health has also undergone notable changes. Although my heart was still far from perfectly healthy, I felt new vitality flowing through my body. The chronic pain that had plagued me for years began to subside. My sleep, previously restless and interrupted, became deeper and more restful. I began exploring alternative healing practices that I previously would have dismissed as pseudoscience: meditation, yoga, Reiki. I found that these practices resonated deeply with what I had experienced during my journey beyond life. They helped me stay connected to that state of expanded consciousness and integrate the lessons I had learned into my daily life. One of the most significant changes was in my relationship with time. Although I still had to live in the linear flow of earthly time, my internal perception had changed dramatically. Every moment seemed to contain an eternity, rich in possibility and meaning. The future was no longer something to be feared, but a field of infinite potential waiting to be explored. As I adapted to this new reality, I began to feel an increasingly stronger calling to share my experience with others. It wasn't just a desire, but an almost physical need. The truths I had glimpsed were too great to keep to myself. I started small, sharing my story with others at the shelter, with the social workers following my case, with anyone who was willing to listen. To my surprise, I discovered that many people were hungry for this kind of spiritual knowledge. My story resonated with something deep within them, awakening their own memories of connection with the divine. However, not all reactions were positive. I faced skepticism, ridicule, and even hostility from some people. Some accused me of being delusional. Others suggested I was trying to get attention or escape responsibility for my problems. These negative reactions were hurtful, but they didn't discourage me. I knew that what I had experienced was real, more real than anything I had ever experienced. And I knew I had a responsibility to share that truth, regardless of the personal consequences. As the days turned into weeks, I began to feel a growing urgency. The date of August 25th, which I had seen so clearly during my experience, doing exactly what I was supposed to be doing. As I adjusted to my new reality and prepared myself for what was to come, I was surprised by news that rocked my world once again. My oldest daughter, Sophia, who was living with her father in another state, had died in a tragic car accident. The pain I felt was indescribable. It was as if a hole had been ripped through my chest, a wound so deep it felt like it would never heal. For a moment, all the peace and understanding I had brought from my near-death experience seemed to evaporate, leaving me once again on the brink of despair. But then, in the midst of my agony, something extraordinary happened. One night, as I cried alone in the shelter's small room, I felt a familiar presence beside me. It wasn't a physical presence, but an energy I would recognize anywhere. It was Sophia. I did not see it with my physical eyes, but with an inner vision that had developed since my near-death experience. She was radiant, enveloped in a soft, loving light. We don't exchange words in the conventional sense, but we communicate on a much deeper level. Sophia assured me that she was fine, that she was at peace. She showed me glimpses of the spiritual realm where I now dwelt, a place of indescribable beauty and love. I felt his compassion for my pain, but also his joy at being free from the limitations of physical existence. This experience was profoundly transformative. Although the pain of loss was still there, it was tempered by a deeper understanding of the nature of life and death. I understood that death is not an end, but a transition, and that the bonds of love that unite us transcend the barriers between the physical and spiritual worlds. In the days that followed, I began to have more and more frequent experiences of connecting with the spiritual world. During meditation or in the moments between sleep and wakefulness, I was often transported to what I can only describe as a green realm. This kingdom was a place of indescribable peace and harmony. Everything there seemed alive and conscious, vibrating with love and intelligence. The colors were more vibrant than anything I'd ever seen on Earth, and there was a constant sense of interconnectedness with everyone and everything. It was in this green realm that I had some of my most profound encounters with Sophia. Together, we observed the earthly plane as if we were on a balcony overlooking the universe. I could see my family in Las Vegas, exactly as they were at that moment. My ex-husband dealing with his own grief, my youngest son playing in the backyard, oblivious to the tragedy that had occurred. These visions were not only comforting but also revealing. I began to understand that reality is much more vast and complex than I ever imagined. The physical world we inhabit is just a small part of a much larger existence. One day, after one of these experiences in the Green Kingdom, I received a photo of my other daughter, who was still alive. The photo showed exactly the scene I had witnessed in my vision, her playing in the yard, wearing the same clothes, in the same position. It was a powerful confirmation that my experiences were not mere imagination or hallucination, but genuine glimpses of a larger reality. These experiences reinforced my conviction that we have an important mission to fulfill. The date of August 25th continued to hover in my mind, a constant reminder that something significant was about to happen. I began to feel a growing urgency to share what I had learned. It wasn't just about telling my personal story, but about conveying a universal message of love, unity, and divine purpose. I felt like I had been given a second chance at life, not just for my own benefit, but to be a channel of light and truth for others. I start organizing small discussion groups at the shelter where I'm living. At first, there are just a few curious people, but soon the group begins to grow. People from all walks of life, from homeless people to successful professionals who heard about the meetings, begin to show up, thirsty for a different perspective on life and the universe. The message I share is simple but profound. We are all interconnected, not just with each other, but with all of existence. Every thought, every action, every choice we make sends ripples through the fabric of reality, affecting everyone and everything around us. I talk about how human life is a divine expression, a manifestation of universal love in physical form. I explain that our challenges and struggles are not punishments or cruel accidents, but opportunities for growth and spiritual evolution. A crucial part of my message is about the event I predicted for August 25th. I explain that it will not be the end of the world, as some fear, but a global awakening. A time when humanity will be called to reevaluate its priorities, to recognize our fundamental interconnectedness, and to make choices that will benefit not just ourselves, but all life on Earth. I emphasize the importance of being prepared for this moment, not with fear or anxiety, but with openness, love, and compassion. I encourage people to look within themselves, to connect with the divine presence that resides in their hearts, and to listen to the intuitive voice that always guides them. As I share these ideas, I see remarkable changes in the people around me. Many come to meetings filled with fear, anger, or despair, but leave with a sparkle in their eyes and a new sense of purpose. Some report experiences of physical and emotional healing. Others talk about reconciliations with long-estranged loved ones. It's not an easy path. I face skepticism, ridicule, and even threats from some people who see my message as dangerous or heretical. There are times when I doubt myself, when the weight of responsibility seems overwhelming. But whenever I feel overwhelmed, I remember the peace and love I experienced during my journey beyond life. I remember the words of wisdom from the beings of light I encountered, and the promise I made to share what I learned. As August 25th approaches, I feel a shift in the energy around me. It's as if the air itself is charged with expectation. People everywhere begin reporting vivid dreams, visions, and mystical experiences. Many speak of a feeling that something important is about to happen. In the midst of all this activity, I don't lose sight of my personal goal of regaining custody of Oliver. I continue to work with social services, demonstrating my stability and commitment to my son's well-being. The journey is not easy, but every step of the way, I feel the guidance and support of the spiritual world. The day before the big day, I meet with a larger group than usual. The air is thick with anticipation and a little fear. I look at the faces around me, some anxious, some hopeful, all seeking guidance and comfort. I take a deep breath and begin to speak, not just in my own words, but channeling the wisdom and love I have experienced beyond this world. Fear not, I say. What is coming is not an end, but a new beginning. It is an opportunity to rise above our limitations, to embrace our true nature as beings of light and love. As I speak, I feel a wave of energy move through the room. It is as if, for a moment, we can all feel the interconnectedness of all things, the fundamental unity that underlies all existence. In that moment, I know that regardless of what tomorrow brings, the seed of transformation has already been planted. August 25th dawns with a surreal stillness. The sky has a peculiar tone, a deep blue mixed with shades of violet that I've never seen before. It's as if the universe itself is holding its breath, waiting for what's to come. I wake up before sunrise, feeling an energy pulsing through my being. I leave the shelter and walk to a small park nearby, wanting to be in contact with nature at this crucial moment. I sit under an ancient tree, close my eyes, and open myself to whatever the universe wants to show me. That's when it happens. A wave of energy sweeps across the planet, so powerful that I can feel it resonating in every cell in my body. It is not something physical in the conventional sense, but a change in the very fabric of reality. I open my eyes, and the world around me seems different. The colors are more vibrant, the sounds are clearer. I can see the energy flowing through the plants, the trees, even the air around me. It is as if a veil has been lifted, revealing the true nature of reality. In the distance, I hear sirens and the sound of people panicking. News begins to arrive from all over the world via smartphones and radios. Earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, weather anomalies. The Earth is experiencing upheavals like never before. But amid the chaos, something extraordinary is happening. People from all corners of the globe report experiences similar to mine. Many speak of a sudden expansion of consciousness, of visions of cosmic unity, of encounters with beings of light. I return to the shelter, where I find people in various states of confusion and ecstasy. Some cry with joy, others tremble with fear. Many report having visions or mystical experiences at night. I gather everyone into a circle and begin to speak, not in my own words, but channeling the wisdom that flows through me. "This is the moment we've been waiting for," I say. "Awakening has begun. It is not the end, but a new beginning. We are being called to rise above our limitations, to embrace our true nature as beings of light and love." In the days that follow, the world undergoes dramatic transformations. Political and economic systems that seemed unshakable begin to crumble. But amidst the chaos, new forms of social organization begin to emerge, based on cooperation, compassion, and an understanding of our fundamental interconnectedness. Science is revolutionized overnight. Researchers around the world report extraordinary advances in areas such as quantum physics, medicine, and clean technology. It is as if the knowledge of the universe is being poured into humanity. In the field of spirituality, the changes are even more profound. The barriers between different religions and spiritual traditions begin to dissolve as people recognize the universal truth underlying them all. Mystical and paranormal experiences, previously considered impossible or reserved for a chosen few, become commonplace. In the midst of all this transformation, I do not forget my personal mission. With the help of friends I made along my journey, I am finally able to regain custody of Oliver. We came together in an emotional embrace, feeling the love flow between us like a current of pure energy. I look at the sky, still painted in those surreal colors, and feel a deep gratitude. Gratitude for the journey that brought me here, for the challenges that forced me to grow, for the people who supported me along the way. I know the road ahead will not be easy. Humanity still has a lot to learn, a lot to heal. But for the first time in a long time, I feel real hope for the future. I see a world where people live in harmony, not just with each other, but with all of creation. And as I hug my son and look at the new world that is being born around us, I know that this is not the end of the story, but just the beginning. The awakening began, and with it, a new era for humanity, an era of light, love, and infinite possibilities.